The film is set in 1988 Virginia. The film opens at a high school in Virginia, where Marin is met by her friend Sherry. She invites Marin to her house for a sleepover, but Marin says her father would not let her. Sherry suggests she sneak out. Marin lives with her father, Frank. After he falls asleep, Marin sneaks out and goes to Sherry's house, where she is hanging out with two other girls, Kim and Jackie. Kim asks Marin about her mother, but she doesn't have an answer. Marin is seen lusting for Kim. Sherry paints Kim's fingernails and shows them to Marin, but Marin grabs Kim's hand and begins biting her finger. Sherry pulls Marin away and leaves Kim's finger mangled and chewed up. Marin runs home as the girls start screaming. She pounds on the door and Frank sees Marin with Kim's blood on her face, realizing what has happened. He gives her 3 minutes before they have to leave for good. Marin and Frank move to Maryland, but Frank abandons Marin while she sleeps. He leaves her with a tape recording, telling her that this is not the first time she has tried to consume human flesh, and that he can no longer protect her from it. In the recording, he is about to tell about separate similar incidents, but Marin stops the tape recording from playing. On her birth certificate left by her father, she discovers her mother's name, Janelle Mae Kearns, and her birthplace. Marin plans to head to Ohio to find her birth mother. On her travels, she continues to play the tape recording left by her father. Frank's voice is heard narrating incidents such as when Marin was 3 and chewed up her babysitter badly enough to kill her, and Frank had to hide her body. Frank's voice in the recording is about to narrate another incident, but Marin stops it from playing again. On her travel, while waiting for the bus, Marin is approached by an older man. He says that he smells her, and knows that she can smell him too, as he is also a cannibal, or eater. He also tells her that he can smell that Marin has not eaten for a very long time. He introduces himself as Sully. Marin is wary of him, but he tells her he has rules, and his #1 rule is never eating an eater. He then brings Marin to a house where an older woman has fallen over and hasn't been able to get up all day, which Sully knows is a sign that she is about to die, and he smells it. Although Marin is horrified, he tells her their hunger for flesh must be cared for. He also advised her that if the circumstances are excellent and safe, they should eat, and it will stop her from doing something she will regret. He further tells her that he doesn't kill people, and she finds the older woman that way. In the morning, the older woman dies, and Sully wastes no time in eating her. Marin sees it and joins Sully in eating. Sully shows Marin a long rope made of hair from the people he's eaten, or outright killed. They talk about Sully's first time. He tells her that his first time was his granddad and his mother found him. Her mother told everyone that an animal had killed his granddad, and he had been alone since running off from that incident. While Sully takes a shower, Marin runs away and hops on a bus, but Sully catches sight of her as she leaves. She continues listening to her father's recording that reveals an incident when Marin was 8 and a little boy was killed, and that Frank concluded that it was Marin's doings. Marin stops in another state and goes to a store where she attempts to shoplift some products. She sees a mother being harassed by another man. Marin speaks up to him, as well as a nearby young man. The young man gets in the man's face and taunts him, causing the man to follow him outside. Marin follows her sense of smell and goes to a nearby abandoned building. She sees the young man emerging with his face and neck caked in the man's blood, as he is also a cannibal. Marin talks to him, acknowledging they share the same condition, and Lee invites Marin to join him as he steals the man's truck. They introduce each other, and he introduces himself as Lee. Lee drives Marin to stay at the man's home for the night. The next day, they both travel together. They talk, eat, and sleep in the back of the truck. They seem to be comfortable with each other. The next day, they drive to Lee's aunt's old home. Lee's sister, Kayla, bangs the door and chastises Lee for leaving and not sticking around like he previously promised. Lee is about to leave again as he agrees to help Marin get to her mother. On their travels, they begin to fall in love with one another. They both enjoy each other's company. As they stop to rest, they are met by 2 men, Jake and Brad, while they introduce different names. Jake is also a cannibal, but Brad isn't, though he has no problem with it. He even tried eating people together with Jake, which creeps Marin out. Jake tells Marin and Lee about how consuming a person, bones and all, make a cannibal feel more than they normally do when they merely consume the flesh. Marin and Lee feel uneasy with the presence of the two men. They wait for them to fall asleep, and they head to steal Jake's truck. He wakes up and tries to catch them, but the two drive away quickly before they are caught. Marin and Lee stop at a carnival, where they kiss on a Ferris wheel before Marin tells Lee that she is hungry. He goes to scout out a potential meal when he comes across a snotty booth operator who denies a kid a prize because he made an underhand throw. Lee tries his hand at it, and the booth operator is more kind and flirtatious with Lee. They make plans to meet later after he closes up. Lee and Marin listen to Frank's recording while waiting for the booth operator. The booth operator comes and meets with Lee. Marin hides nearby as she watches Lee bring the booth operator into a cornfield, where they begin to make out. Lee masturbates the booth operator and slits his throat before he climaxes, then invites Marin to feast off him. Moments later, they see the booth operator had come from a nearby house, where he has a wife and child. Marin is mortified at what they have done. Marin told Lee about their future if they have to do it for 60 or 70 years. They continue their travels, and Marin meets her grandmother, Barbara. She reluctantly invites Marin inside as she asks Barbara questions regarding Janelle. Barbara says that Janelle is no longer with them. She shows Marin pictures of Janelle when she was young and also tells her that Janelle is only their adopted daughter. Marin asks Barbara if Janelle has ever hurt anyone. Barbara is pissed with the question, clearly not the topic she wants to talk about. Barbara then tells Marin to ask Janelle herself. She clarifies that Janelle isn't dead, just that she now resides in a mental hospital. Marin also promises never to revisit Barbara, which she is thankful for. Marin makes it to the hospital where Janelle is staying. She doesn't speak much and has chewed off her own hands. The nurse gives Marin a letter that Janelle wrote years earlier, specifically for Marin. The letter details Janelle's ordeal as a cannibal and how she didn't feel Marin was safe around her. Not long after Marin finishes reading the letter, Janelle attempts to attack and eat Marin until the nurse holds her back, prompting Marin to run away. Marin meets with Lee outside the hospital, annoyed and afraid. Soon they get into an altercation regarding Lee slitting the carnival booth operator's throat. Marin is against killing, and Lee tells her they have no choice, and if not, they will become like her mother. The next day, after driving for a while, Marin stops and tells Lee that she must get gas. While Lee is sleeping, Marin runs off, leaving Lee behind. On her way, she is met by Sully again, who has been following her. When he invites her to join him again, she rejects him. Marin is creeped out by the thought that Sully has been following her. Sully angrily calls Marin a cunt and drives away. Later, we see Lee calling her sister Kayla. He tells her he is coming home while forcing himself not to cry. Lee was really devastated by Marin's absence. Marin later comes across Kayla and her friends. She stops to talk to Kayla about Lee. Kayla mentions that they lived with their father, but he had disappeared mysteriously. She shares that their father was a drunk. One time he hurt Lee, and while Kayla tried to break them, their father also hurt her, which escalated the situation. Kayla ran off, and when she got back with the cops, their father and his car were gone, and Lee was full of blood. Everyone believes that Lee killed their father, but the blood test shows it was all Lee's blood. Marin later reunites with Lee. The two resume their relationship and try to live a normal life together. They go on a road trip, and they are happy together. On their travels, Marin asks Lee about what Kayla told her. He reluctantly shares the unfortunate events that day. He reveals that after Kayla ran off, his father tried to rip him open with his teeth, which explains the blood on Lee's body. He managed to knock him down, tied him, and brought him to an abandoned barn for 3 days. And when all was cleared, Lee returned to his father and ate him. He added that he probably killed himself if not for his sister Kayla. After a few months together, Marin and Lee are living happily and peacefully until they are found by Sully. He attacks Marin and holds a knife to her, trying to force her to go with him. Sully smells Lee near and is about to stab Marin, but Lee wraps a plastic bag around Sully's head. Sully stabs Lee in the chest, but Marin is able to wrestle the knife away from Sully, and she begins to stab him. They pull his body into the bathtub, where Marin digs into Sully's body and pulls out one of his organs to eat. Sully is alive for long enough to witness until he finally passes. Marin finds Sully's hair rope and finds a lock of blonde hair, indicating that he killed Kayla and was able to find Marin this way. Lee finds that he is severely bleeding, as Sully punctured his lung. Marin attempts to help Lee get up so they can get help, but they know that they cannot get help from a hospital without explaining their circumstances, so Lee tells Marin to eat him, bones and all. Marin doesn't want to do it, but Lee is persistent. She does eat Lee while he is still alive. The last shot is of Marin and Lee sometime earlier, sitting on a rock while holding each other.
Thank you for watching, guys. Please consider subscribing. Every new subscriber means the world to me and helps support the channel's growth. I appreciate your consideration and thank you for being a part of this journey with me.